What's up, everybody? So it's been a while since I've done any fight news, but it doesn't mean I haven't been watching. So I know the first thing that everybody's going to want to hear me talk about today is going to be all the fallout from UFC 229. I'm going to touch upon some Bellator stuff. Bellator's got 2 cards, one tomorrow, one Saturday. Crawford versus Benavidez Jr. Saturday as well. Touch up on some boxing news, maybe a little bit of Wilder Fury hype. Touch up on some announcements that have been made in the UFC, title shots, cards getting moved around. So let's jump right into it. UFC 229, got my laptop pulled up right here. Phenomenal pay-per-view. This is what separates the UFC from all the other organizations out there, is that when they put on a big pay-per-view, they come out with the hits. When they decide that they're going to put together a big card, they deliver. Some of their other cards and smaller cards, FS1 Fight Pass cards, can be kind of, I get it. But the big pay-per-view feel that they put together, it's something trending between 2.3, 2.4 million pay-per-view buys. That's more than Canelo versus Triple G2 did. I mean, they can put together a big fight. So, top to bottom, I'm just going to go over the post-fight brawl shit just very quickly. I don't like it. You know, I think I'm very much a purist in the sport, respect and such. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth because now everybody's talking about the post-fight antics and McGregor campaigning for a rematch instead of how wonderful Khabib's performance was. I mean, the takedowns were there, even when he didn't get them. He dropped McGregor on the feet. He submitted him. I mean, it was a dominant performance, top to bottom. And just touch up on a couple of things about Khabib is what we've noticed is that he will take time to work his stand-up in fights. He came out grappling heavy in the first, dropped him with a strike grappling heavy in the second. He came out in the third and was on his feet more, which I know can be very dangerous against a striker of McGregor's caliber. But we saw it in the Al Iaquinta fight. This is a tactic of his. You know, he didn't look gassed and exhausted in that third round. He didn't look gassed or exhausted in any round against Al Iaquinta, I thought. But, while his stand-up, it is very... It's not a textbook thing from what you would want from, like, a world-class striker, but it's functional. The threat of the takedown makes it work for him. He can pull off just the stuff that he needs by utilizing his striking effectively. The threat of the takedown is there, so guys are really hesitant to open up on him. His jab, though it's kind of herky and jerky, it worked wonders for him on McGregor. It got him inside the distance he needed to be to make those long shots effective. The overhand right that he cracked McGregor with in the second round, I thought was great. Now, give McGregor some props. He took some hellacious shots in that fight. He did very well against defending the takedowns at first. In the first round, he did great and trying to get his foot behind the knee when he was going for that single leg. He was defending it well. Khabib switched it up and went for the double, got him down, held him down in the first. Really wasn't trying to overexert himself or go for anything too wild. Secured the round, made his point to McGregor. He's like, hey, I can do this to you. And, that overhand right in the second round was... I didn't expect that. I don't think anybody expected that. John Kavanaugh, McGregor's coach, came out on the Joe Rogan Experience, said he didn't expect that. But it goes to show is you can land on McGregor. His hands are low. His chin's usually high. If you're calm and calculated, Khabib, he can pump that weird jab of his. He can move forward technically. He doesn't have the greatest put-together striking, but it works. And if you leave your chin down, you're going to get hit. That's what happened there. I thought the fouls were horrendous. McGregor was fouling Khabib up all night, grabbing the inside of the glove, kneed him to the head once on the ground, was grabbing the cage, putting his toes in the cage. Herb Dean didn't call it, except for a few times. I thought that was... Herb Dean's a great referee, but I thought that was very poor refereeing performance from him. But and a lot of people are saying about the choke. Let's talk about the choke. That he tapped too quick, and that it wasn't a good choke. Just don't. And I see like the really uneducated fans just like, oh, all he did was wrestle. All he did was check. Blah blah blah. Y'all are the guys that really get under my skin. That's why I don't get on interacting with people on Twitter too much because y'all make my brain hurt. it's mixed martial arts. It's all encompasses the grappling, the wrestling, the striking. If you just want to watch people throw punches at each other, watch boxing or kickboxing. Or shut the fuck up. I don't care. It's it's really annoying. He had his neck cranked. He had pressure on both sides of the neck. It was smart for McGregor to tap because he was either going to get put to sleep or his jaw was going to get broken. Fantastic performance for Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's shown that while his striking does have some problems, he lifts his chin up and tilts his head back, which can be dangerous if somebody comes in and cracks you while you're leaning back with your chin up. He makes it work. And it's going to be something that guys are going to start, because we've seen it consecutively in a lot of fights now. It's going to be one of those things that people are going to start zoning in on. And I'm going to talk about some things with McGregor. We've seen with McGregor that when he has the ability to pull back and counter, that's when he's at his most dangerous. In this fight, he very much came straight forward on Khabib, which brought him right into the threat of takedown range. A lot of people call for, more lateral movement, but against a guy like Khabib, you've just got to be able to have either not be there at all or be able to shuck it off before he gets a real good hold on you. Because once he gets a hold of you, you can go for that single, the high crotch, the double. If he gets you against the fence, you're really screwed. Because if he gets the double underhooks and the clinch grip while he's got you pressed against the cage, it will drag you down to the ground and ride you. He gets you against the fence, he will double wrap across your legs and hold you in position and beat you up. The guy's a monster when it comes to the grappling. But one of the things that I noticed about McGregor on the feet, and this is something that I noticed against Floyd and against Diaz, is that if you put the pace on McGregor and you just get him backing up to where he's not popping in and out, in and out, in and out, looking for that counter left hand, you can throw combinations on him. Because we saw it in the second round of the first Diaz fight. We saw it in late in the second round of the second Diaz fight, and especially in the third round of the Diaz fight. You get McGregor tired, you get him backing up, not moving in and out, you get him straight backing up, and you can throw combinations on him. He doesn't have too much slick defensive head movement. We've seen him move his head a little bit, but when you get him tired, he can be teed off on. And it showed in this fight. Because while Khabib is not the most menacing guy on feet, when McGregor was getting tired and he was worried about that takedown, Khabib was able to land some shots on him. And it's because Khabib was smart about it, though, because you can't just go balls to the wall wild with McGregor, or you will get, your life snatched from you. Excuse me while I take a drink of water. This is going to be one of those fights that people can really study for McGregor and kind of, especially like the Diaz fights. You are beginning to see, okay, how much further can Conor take himself? Is he reaching his ceiling? Are we going to start seeing him alternate wins and losses? Because if you count the Mayweather fight, he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights dating back to 2016. Lost to Diaz, competitive fight to Diaz, stopped Eddie Alvarez, took the year off from MMA, fought Floyd, then had another year off from MMA, he comes back and loses to Khabib. Are we starting to see the best of what Conor McGregor has? I mean, he's a phenomenal fighter. I'm not trying to knock on the guy. I'm just trying to simply put my thoughts out there. Is this going to be the start of a slow tumble for him? That's why I don't want to see him fight Khabib again in an immediate rematch. Now, my phrasing there is very particular. It's just, would I like to see him fight again? Sure. Not an immediate rematch. He got dominated. He got crushed. I have no desire to see him fight Khabib again right now. Now, if he was to fight a guy like a Justin Gaethje or a Dustin Poirier, or maybe have that third fight with Diaz, or even fight a guy like Kevin Lee, even though it's unlikely Kevin Lee gets that fight because there's a difference in name power there. Get down, kitty. Sorry, that's my cat. Kevin Lee's scheduled to fight Aya Quinta at the end of this year, so I think that's a little bit unlikely. But the Diaz-Poirier fight just fell apart, which my heart was broken for. I was really looking forward to that fight. I thought it would have been a great boosting win for Dustin Poirier if he could pull it off, and a big win for Nate Diaz if he was to beat Poirier, who's currently ranked outside or right in the top 5 of the division. So there's a lot to go over there as far as matchups, but I don't want to go on too far. Don't want an immediate rematch right now. Don't want it. Don't want it. Because the guy I'm going to talk about next is who I think I should see fight Khabib, and that is my boy Tony Ferguson, who looked phenomenal against Anthony Pettis on Saturday night. Yes, he did get clipped by the right hand, but Tony Ferguson, when he gets hurt, he is very wiry. He will move away from you. He'll pull guard. And it was very smart of him to tangle up Anthony Pettis. It's the same thing he did against Lando Venata. When he gets hurt, he knows to go to one of his strong suits. And when he ties you up, he's very dangerous on the ground, so you have to be very careful with how you play with him there, even when he's hurt. But when Tony Ferguson gets in that zone and he's jamming those teep kicks into your gut, and he's popping that jab and letting that jab roll off into the left hook and throwing the right straight down the pedal, and he's got you backed up against the cage and you're starting to feel it, that's what happened to Anthony Pettis. He started to feel it. He has some of the nastiest elbows in the game when it comes to pressing you up against the fence like that. I mean, the guy is tough as nails. I want to see him fight for the title next because there's not another guy in the division that deserves it more than Tony Ferguson, bar none. Khabib Nurmagomedov is on an 11-fight win streak in the UFC, 27-0 overall. Tony Ferguson is 25-3 on an 11-fight win streak in the UFC. Both these guys, they both beat Barboza. No kidding. Khabib just beat Conor McGregor. Tony Ferguson has just taken out another former lightweight champ. He's beat Anthony Pettis. He's beat Rafael Dos Anjos. Give this man his shot at the title. He was already the interim champ, waiting for a shot at the undisputed belt. Give him his shot. Give him the damn shot. So, anywho, thoughts on Anthony Pettis? I thought it was the right call for the corner to stop the fight. That's not, you know, there's the fans out there who are going to complain and say Anthony Pettis quit. No. We need to see more stuff like that from the corners in MMA, because if you remember just a few months back, we were hooting and hollering over whether or not Raquel Pennington's corner should have sent her out there for the 5th round against Amanda Nunes. Junior Dos Santos versus Cain Velasquez, 2-3. There are these situations where it's good to see a corner step in and say, hey, I know my fighter. No, that's it. If I remember, there's something about a fracture behind in the knuckle on Anthony Pettis' right hand, one of the knuckles. Can't really remember. But, you know, hell of a performance. He showed that he is still dangerous, but he does have some technical flaws in his stand-up, even though he is very much a sniper. I picked Edson Barboza over him when they were leading their fight because his boxing isn't as sharp. His kicks are nasty and phenomenal. He's got very good jiu-jitsu, but, you know, he even said it himself that the wrestling can be a problem for him. And Tony Ferguson didn't have to go that route. He just put it on him on the feet. And I've seen guys beat Anthony Pettis, but I've never seen somebody just savage him like that. That was a fight of the year contender for me. I think that I'd have to look back over some of the other big fights. I know we had Gaethje and Poirier and Gaethje and Alvarez that were pretty damn good fights this year. But Ferguson and Pettis is up there on my list, for fight of the year contenders. Sorry, it's horrible. Bad camera manners. Anyway, so yeah, Conor needs to go off and fight somebody a step down. I know that a lot of people are going to be like, no, it's a big fight. It's like I don't want to see that fight. I've seen it. It happening 3 months down the line isn't going to make it a better fight than this one was. Build it. The UFC talks about how they can build fights and how they're the best promotion out there. Get a little lightweight tourney going up. You know, you've got Poirier that's injured. You've got Nate Diaz who's waiting in the wings, which who knows if Nate Diaz is even going to fight this year at all now because this fight fell apart. But, you know, lightweight to me is the most stacked division in the UFC, and I know Tyron Woodley disputes that. No disrespect to you, champ. I think you're a phenomenal fighter, but lightweight is the premier division when it comes to what you can see talent-wise in the UFC. Make Khabib versus Tony. That's where I'm going to end there with talking about that. Maybe Anthony Pettis. Well, he's. I don't want to talk about matchups possibly for him because I want him to be able to rest and recover and heal that hand. I don't like to see guys get pushed into quick turnarounds, especially off of a damaging fight like that. They got to look at their long-term health, and this is we can see Pettis 3-6 in his last 9, 4-10 in his last. You know, or 4-6 in his last 10. It's time. You know, you've got to take the time off to recover and fine-tune some things after big losses like this. Excuse me. So, I'm just going to hit up on a couple couple of fights on this card because I've got a lot of stuff I want to talk about today. Dominic Reyes. I was real high on Dominic Reyes coming into this fight. This was the best fight that you could have had for him. Fighting against the wily veteran, he goes 3 hard rounds. He clearly wins each round. He got him some rounds in, got him some experience. He took on a much tougher opponent than he has before. This is the best outcome, personally, for me that I could have seen from Dominic Reyes. Because a quick first-round knockout would have been great. But this showed, it's like, all right, he does have some areas in his game that are pretty good, that we hadn't seen before. You know, his takedown fence looked pretty good. His striking's pretty nasty. He's shown he can work that gas tank over a 15-minute distance. I'm very happy with that performance from him. And he's a guy that I've been keeping my eye on, and I hope he goes good places in the division. I'd like to see him fight maybe like a Corey Anderson, John Blachowicz, you know, continue to work his way up in the division. Derek Lewis. What can I say, man? I haven't been very high on Derek Lewis because he does have a very limited skill set, but that guy is fucking tough. And he's a Texas boy. Shout out to Texas. You know, I grew up in East Texas. Damn. Just, it's kind of like a round by round. At the end of the first round, I was really worried because Lewis is one of those guys, you know, for having not seen too many high-level skills from Derek Lewis on the ground, he is very difficult to hold in place. And I've seen this from him before, and he turned over and got into Volkov's guard and started dropping bombs on him at the end of the first round. I was like, this is what you have to worry about. He will bomb on you when he gets the opportunity. And he's a very hard-hitting guy. But Volkov was clearly at an advantage on the feet at a distance. You know, he was using his kicks very well. He was shooting that nice straight right down the middle and catching him on the chin, popping him up with a jab. I thought that Volkov would do this after watching, you know, several of his fights. Been watching him since his Bellator days, seeing him evolve a little bit. I thought he was going to outpoint. Get down, kitty. I'm down. Shit, just broke my train of thought. Volkov. So I thought he would piece Derek Lewis up, Derek Lewis being tough enough to survive and get a dominant decision. And it looked like we were going to get that. But in the third round, I kind of noticed something with Volkov as he stopped working with his hands for the most part. He was just kind of staying to the outside, kicking at Lewis, which, you know, if you want to, you know, coast it out and secure the win, you know, I get that. But Lewis started stepping in more and throwing just a little bit more with that right hand in that third round because his corner was telling him, hey, man, you're down. And if you get inside the kicking distance like Lewis ended up doing, it's good to throw that straight right. Because he was cracking him with a straight right throughout the fight. I thought it was not a strategically good idea for him to abandon that. And it showed. He got flustered in the kicking distance and threw like an up knee, which was a horrible idea. We saw Stefan Struve get knocked out against Travis Brown. Saw him get dropped against Paul Buonantello doing some crazy knee shit. And now Derek Lewis is fighting Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight title, which, hey, you know, hats off to you. If you can pull a miracle knockout and become heavyweight champion of the world, cool. But it does kind of leave a sour taste in my mouth because he just fought. The fight's in like 3 weeks. And for what, it's not definitive, but for what will likely be his only shot at UFC gold in his career, I think this is some really shitty circumstances to get him under. I mean, he was talking about in his post-fight interview, not only were his balls hot, but he didn't think. That was one of my favorite post-fight moments of all time. You gotta love this guy. He's got a great personality. But he said he wasn't interested in the title shot, but when the UFC calls, what are you gonna do? Michelle Lewis getting the title shot, you know, great for him. Just wrap that up there. Not the greatest circumstances. I think the circumstances are pretty damn shitty. But what are you going to do? We'll see what he does against Cormier in a couple weeks. I think Cormier beats him up pretty handily. But he has that kind of crazy power. You don't know. I'm picking Cormier on that, though. Just a couple of quick hits from the fight. Michelle Waterson and Felice Herrig. Decent fight, you know, it wasn't the high action like a Ferguson versus Pettis, but two veteran ladies of women's MMA. I love Felice Herrig. I've been following her since her early career. Michelle Waterson's a beast. Been watching her since her Invicta days. great showing, ladies. Both these girls are kind of like outside contendership. You know, they've had enough losses where, and they're late enough into their careers where it's like, doubt you really make it back up. But with as thin as women's flyweight is, who knows? Michelle Waterson could beat one or two more girls and be fighting for the title. And we'll just kind of see where it goes from there. Jusir Formiga, I think he should be fighting Henry Cejudo. I know they've got Joseph Benavidez fighting Ray Borg coming up, which might get bumped to title shot or contender status. But I'd like to see Formiga fight for the title. You know, he's a veteran of the 125-pound weight class. He's been one of those guys that before the UFC brought it over, he was thought to be the number one in the world. Then he lost to Ian McCall. Ian McCall was thought to be the number one. And, you know, he's fought it out. He's put together some wins. He's had some losses. He's fought the best guys at this weight class in the world. Give him a shot, you know? I know they're talking about the Cejudo-Dillashaw fucking super fight, but in my little lone world, you'd put TJ Dillashaw in the main event of a pay-per-view versus Marlon Moraes, who just had a brutal knockout over Jimmy Rivera. You'd put Henry Cejudo in the co-main event versus Jusir Formiga. You get them two talking shit to each other at the press conferences, saying, you know, I'll beat up my opponent, and there's that, oh, you know, are they overlooking their opponents? It gives it a good storyline you can build on. So that's my kind of thoughts there. Vicente Luque, really like this dude. Solid fighter. Don't know if he can work his way to a title shot, but I really like what I'm seeing from him. He's a relatively young dude. Don't let his record fool you. His stand-up's nasty. Knocked out Jalil Turner. That's all I'm going to say there. Keep your eye on him. Aspen Ladd crushed Tanya Evinger. This, for me, is I hadn't actually seen Aspen Ladd fight before, I think, which is really sad when, you know, but there's so many cards, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, Muay Thai. You know, I'm watching a little bit more jiu-jitsu these days. She flew under the radar for me on this. I was really looking at Tanya Evinger, and I saw Ladd, and I'm like, okay, yeah, she seems like a good prospect. But she blew Tanya Evinger out of the water. Get that girl a step-up fight. Maybe have Aspen Ladd. Oh, wait. Who could do? I don't know. Maybe give her some more workup fights. You know, let her advance in the division. You know, we don't want to rush her up too quick against a girl like Amanda Nunes. Maybe a Kat Zingano fight. I don't know. I'm kind of throwing stuff out there. I can't remember who all's at women's bantamweight at the moment. Scott Holtzman beat Alana Patrick. Good knockout. Yana Kunitskaya and Lena Landsberg. Battle of Whip. Who got beat up by Cyborg. I never get burps until I'm on camera. I don't know what it is. It never happens until I'm on camera. Yana Kunitskaya and Lena Landsberg. It was an fight. Nick Lentz and Gray Maynard, neither one of these guys are really going anywhere as far as like rankings in the division. They're going to probably stay right around where they're at. But congrats for Lentz for the win. You know, that was a good fight for him. He beat the shit out of Gray Maynard. Gray Maynard, man, been watching you for a long time. Not going to just do you, man. Do what you think's best for yourself. Might be time to... I hate being that guy who says it might be time for people to retire because some of these athletes, it's all that they have as source of income is to fight. But, you know, it gets... When every shot that I see you get hit by a rock shoe, that's when I get worried as a fan. Because I don't want to see anybody die in the UFC from getting knocked unconscious and their brain fucking melting in their skull. Tony Martin, Ryan LaFlair. I can't remember seeing Tony Martin fight before this either. And I thought, you know, Ryan LaFlair couldn't get his hands going at all. His kicks were a little, you know, they were effective at times, but he just retired, by the way. Hats off to you, sir, and whatever endeavor you choose to do next. You know, it's all I do enjoy it when fighters decide to retire without going on like 6 or 7 fight losing streaks, getting knocked out and choked out in consecutive bouts. You know, so I think, you know, I guess he was feeling something going in this fight, definitely feeling something after it. So, you know, heart goes out to you. Best of luck for your future career. Tony Martin, I'll keep an eye out for you, for your next fight. Before I switch over to Bellator MMA, touch up on some UFC news. John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson has been signed for the light heavyweight title. This December, UFC 232, end of the year card, main event over Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes. That's a fight, you know. that's about the best fight I think they could do for Jon Jones in his return. I've been very critical of Jon Jones outside the ring for his antics and stuff because I am a fan of him inside the ring. I want to see him fight. But he's been very hard with all of the suspensions and failed tests and this and that to get into the ring and see him fight. You know, and he's 31 years old now. He's only had, I think, 3 fights out of the past 4 years. I really want to see him fight, and against Alexander Gustafsson, which you could say was the toughest fight of his career. I'm all for that. You don't have to sell this fight to me. I'm like, click on the Fight Pass account. I'm definitely watching that one, especially with the co-main event and the rest of the card that they had there. So really excited for that fight. Really am looking forward to Jon Bones Jones being back. You know, I thought I'll admit, I thought he should have got a harsher suspension. I thought 15 months was not fair to some of the other guys who have failed one test and got the immediate 2 years. But he's got the money, he's got the lawyers. That's all I'll say about that. Other news, yeah, I already touched up on DC and Lewis, which is going to be 3 weeks, UFC 230. They pulled Valentina Shevchenko versus Sinjar Eubanks from that card and have moved Shevchenko back to UFC 231, I do believe. And she will face Joanna Jędrzejczyk, vacant women's flyweight title, 125 pounds. Really like that fight. These girls have history. They fought, I think, 3 times, maybe more in Muay Thai. So really, really excited to see how this matchup goes. Dustin Poirier injured out of the Nate Diaz fight. Breaks my heart. Really wanted that fight for Poirier. It's like, man, if he pulls off this win, there's not a lot of other guys in the division that can, you know, call him out and say, you know, I deserve a fight over you. Hate it for him. Probably not going to see Nate Diaz fight again for God knows how long because this fight fell apart. I was surprised that he took the fight against Poirier. Just being 100% honest. Who knows? So, is there any other big news that I wanted to touch up on UFC-wise? Just touch up briefly on the 165-pound division. I like it. You know, they kind of, him and Diaz were kind of mock promoting a 165 title. I like it. So, what I say there, you know, I think 165 pounds is a good idea. Kind of a weird thing. If they made the 165 division, I'd even say push welterweight from 170, 175. Have it every 10. Except for like right in like 195, 205, I think. Yeah, that's right. I'd like a 195 pound weight class. 205, and I don't know about what weight classes after 205. You know, I think they'd be stretching it to put another one in there because the heavyweight it's very short on talent, and you know you got to get them where you can. Yeah, so I'd be in favor of 165, a 195, and maybe a 225, maybe like 225, 230, something like that, you know, right there between like where the heavyweights all of a sudden start getting giant, you know, because a guy like Stipe sits around in the 240s. Maybe he's been up as high as 250. I don't remember. I think the heaviest I've seen him was like maybe 249. So, yeah, you know, I'm in favor of more weight classes. I think it could be a good idea, and I think the divisions would kind of fill themselves out over time because they've just signed a 5-year deal with ESPN. They're going to keep putting on fights. Why not make more opportunities for more champions? More champions means you have an easier time filling out these pay-per-view cards. So, you know, that's just a quick hot take on that for me. Bellator MMA. Roy McDonald got beat up pretty badly by Gegard Mousasi. It is what it is there. I thought that was a bit of an odd matchup, and Mousasi's jab immediately came to my mind because Rory's nose is very sensitive to jabs. It's been broken and busted up so many times. I thought it was a compelling matchup, but I favored Mousasi just because of the size difference. You know, I thought if Rory, you know, one of the most skilled 170-pounders on the planet, but not like a giant middleweight, like a guy like Gegard Mousasi by no means is just like a massive middleweight, but he's fought at 205, and I think he got like a Kimura or an Americano over Mark Hunt. I know he has. I gotta look at it now. Give me 1 second. Yes, because I'm pretty sure, you know, he has a submission win over Mark Hunt, which would speak to the size of Yeah, straight armbar over Mark Hunt. He's fought some big-ass dudes, so I thought the Rory fight was kind of sketchy. Turned out to be. But Friday and Saturday, Bellator 207 and Bellator 208, we have the semifinals of the Bellator Heavyweight Tournament, which I thought the participants were bizarre. I know they've got Minakov back under their umbrella now, so I think the winner of this tournament fights Minakov. Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader. God. If Bader can just avoid getting hit too clean by Matt Mitrione, I think his wrestling and conditioning can take this fight over. But damn, that's a tough matchup. Mitrione's a southpaw. He's a natural heavyweight. I mean, Bader was a big light heavyweight, but I think he's, a pretty undersized heavyweight. Oh, God. I'm taking Bader because there's a clear path to victory, I think, for him. He's just got to stay, he's got to stay competitive on the feet. He doesn't have to dominate Mitrione in the stand-up, but he's got to compete with him a little bit. Use the sharp movement, pop the jab, pop the right hand. He hits pretty hard. That right hand, straight right or overhand against the southpaw could be effective, but Mitrione is a big dude. You don't want to spend too much time. Mitrione opens up for the kicks. Keep that wrestling ready. Yeah, I'm picking Bader on that one. There is always that. I'm saying it now. There's the chance that the power of Mitrione being a natural heavyweight and as quick and athletic of a guy as he is could take Bader out, but I'm taking the technical advantages in the wrestling for Bader over Mitrione here. Roy Nelson and Sergey Kharitonov in the co-main event. It's a fun fight, veteran heavyweights. Favoring Nelson just because, if it does go to the ground, he has the ability to really put it there. I haven't really seen that much from Sergey. He's much more of a boxing striker guy. Lorenz Larkin, now this is a good fight to mention because this is like a reserve bout for the welterweight Grand Prix that they've got going on. Lorenz Larkin, he's a solid dude. I thought it was a little odd when the UFC cut him, but hey, what are you going to do? Good pickup for Bellator. Don't know anything about the guy he's facing. It's not meant to be disrespectful to him, but I've never seen him fight before. Baby Slice, Kimbo Slice's son, Kevin Ferguson Jr. is fighting there. Keeping the Kimbo Slice memory alive. Rest in peace to the street fighting legend. Don't know anybody else on this card and got to move on to the next one. There's a lot of shit that I wanted to talk about this week. Fedor and Chael, this is one of those fights that I'm like, why Fedor? I wish he would have stayed retired, but I know the man loves to compete. He loves the sport. He loves fighting. Get out, kitty. Mess with my broadcast. So, Fedor, he has all the tools to win this fight. I mean, he can knock Chael out on the feet. He can smite him on the ground. He can take Chael down. He's the naturally larger man. He's been fighting at heavyweight his whole career. Chael has fought as low as 185 pounds. I don't know. It's a hard fight to pick just because of where both these guys are. And I know some of you saying, it's like, oh my God, it's Fedor. Why are you struggling to pick? Because, I don't know how much Fedor has left in the tank. That's the thing is, if you're even off mentally by a little bit, if you're physically not there, which obviously, given some of the ways that he's been rocked in some of his past few fights, yeah. I mean, he was getting pieced up by Fabio Maldonado just a short while back. We all remember that? Yeah. He was getting pieced up by Fabio Maldonado. So, how can Chael win? Straight left hand on the feet, rush in, get the legs, pin him against the cage, get some knees against the cage, score a couple of takedowns. Chael just has to win sections of each round to pull this fight off. Be a little bit competitive on the feet. It's like I say, you don't have to outstrike a better striker. You've just got to stay competitive with him. Get him down right out that top position. Remember, Fedor got knocked out by Dan Henderson. Now, Dan Henderson has way more punching power than Chael Sonnen, but Fedor has lost to smaller guys. the draw with Fabio Maldonado, everybody was like, ugh. And that speaks to the state that Fedor's in. So forgive me if I'm a little bit skeptical on his skill set and his physical ability to fight these days. Picking Fedor, though, I know I just spoke about how Chael could win. He's a very good wrestler. He's maintains his conditioning. Oh yeah, the other card. Never mind. Sorry. Thought I missed a fight. I'm picking Fedor, just harder hitter. And if Chael wins, I'm gonna be like, oh, why didn't I pick Chael? Because then I would have got the fight right. But if Fedor wins, then I got this pick right. And just when you're dealing with heavyweights, all it takes is that one shot. And Fedor does have a very good submission game. He submitted a lot of guys in his career. Submitted Kevin Randleman, submitted Mark Coleman, hard-nosed wrestlers. And Chael does have a history of being submitted, so there's my thing there. Moving on, Alexander Shlemenko is fighting somebody who I've never seen before. Again, not to disrespect the guy who he's fighting. Just never seen you fight before, bro. Don't know what to say there. Shlemenko has been a staple for Bellator for a long time. Hope he gets win. He could use it. Maybe he works his way back up there, get a rematch with Gegard Mousasi, because that fight was pretty close, and he did have Mousasi in a bit of trouble there. Chet Congo and Timothy Johnson. Timothy Johnson got cut from the UFC off of a win. Happens sometimes. Chet Congo had a big knockout in his last fight. Should be interesting. If I can watch it, I will. So both of these fights, Paramount Network, DAZN, which is spelled D-A-Z-N, but they can pronounce it DAZN. I don't get it, but Friday night, Bader versus Mitrione, Bellator 207. Saturday night, Bellator 208, Fedor versus Sonnen. Check the fights out. If you're not doing anything, I know me, if I'm not doing anything, what better way to spend your time than to watch some fights? So I will be tuning in. That's all I got for Bellator MMA. Already hit up on some UFC news. So now let's talk a little bit of boxing. I didn't get to talk about this initially when it happened. Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin 2. Not mad at the decision. I thought Canelo did way better in this fight than he did in the first fight, but it was an incredibly tough fight. Because last fight I was like, Golovkin won that fight. I still stand by that statement. I know a lot of people was like, oh, well, you could have called a draw. Well, a lot of people could have called this fight a draw. But, I'm not mad at the decision. And I'm actually one of the rare few. I know the WEC just said that Golovkin and Charlo is a mandatory. I'd like to see that fight, I'm with that. That's where he's had 2 fights against Canelo, and he got... Me personally, thought he won the first fight. I'm not going to call it robbery because it was close. This fight I thought it was even more close than the last one. Not going to call it robbery though. Super close fight. And I could scratch my chin. I'm like, yeah, I can understand how people say Canelo won. But I can also understand the case for saying Golovkin won. A lot of people are discounting the jabs and they're saying, oh, well, he complained with Canelo about him running in the first fight and then he ran. It's like, no, he's stuck a movie in and out. He's got that natural European boxing Eastern European boxing background. It's in his blood to box. So incredible fight. I'd say one of the better fights I've seen in recent memory when it comes to boxing. Really happy about being able to experience that fight, watching it live on pay-per-view. For me, I love the sport of boxing. I love MMA. I love all these. So be able to say, it's like, yeah, I've watched that one live. It's always important for me to be able to watch these things happen and unfold and remember them through my own eyes at the time, what I was feeling when it comes to what I'll tell my kids about fighting and shit like that. But, so, not too mad. Personally, I'd rather, I know there's money to be made for a rematch, but it's not, I don't think it's going to happen, not Eddie Alvarez, Jesus, wrong sport. Canelo Alvarez is already set up to fight somebody, if memory serves right, at 168 pounds coming up. I think the gentleman's name was Rocky Fielding. I'm going to have to do my research on that. I'll probably touch up on it in a podcast later down the road. Interesting fight for Nick Canelo, we'll see. And if Golovkin does fight Charlo, that's an interesting fight as well. Look forward to seeing that. Nothing's been announced. I'm just saying that was something put out by the WEC. I'll watch it. But this Saturday, ESPN Plus, you've got Terence Crawford versus Jose Benavidez Jr. I can understand, from kind of the buzzings, Crawford's the winner. And I'm going to say, as I've said before, haven't seen Benavidez fight. It's not because I don't care about him as a fighter. It's just he's never run across my radar before. I know, shame on me being a fight analyst, but I cover a lot of shit. Mostly, the MMA side of things. So it's really hard for me to know every fighter out there. If it's a big fight and people are talking about it, I will talk about it. So that's why I'm talking about this gentleman. I did see he had a win over, who was it? Which is the one thing that kind of really stood out to me on his record. He has a win over Mauricio Herrera, who a lot of people thought beat Danny Garcia back in the day. And he does have some size on Crawford, a couple inches taller, about 4 inches of reach. So it'll be interesting to see Crawford, now that he's moved up to 147, he's going to have to face off against some bigger dudes. That's the thing about when you move up in weight classes. Yeah, your body fills out, you feel better, you're not cutting as much weight, but you're fighting bigger dudes you're no longer the guy trying to get down to that weight. There are guys that are going to be getting down to the weight you're moving up to. Now, I don't think Benavidez Jr. is one of those guys. Let's see. Well, he had a light welterweight title. Oh, and speaking of weight, it's going to be for the WBO welterweight title that Crawford got off of Jeff Horn after savaging him in his last fight. I knew that was... I hate to say it, I thought it was a squash match for Crawford. This should be an interesting fight, though. If I can watch Bellator and this Saturday night, I will definitely. So, Saturday night, ESPN, I'm picking Crawford because I think Crawford has separated himself from the pack of some of the current boxers, and the fact that he was one of the guys who was able to unify all those alphabet titles at his previous division. That's the kind of stuff I like to see from boxers. They say, I don't want to be just this long. It's rarely done. It's for everybody to get all the belts. I'll just put it that way. I thought that was very impressive to me. It's like, you got all the titles. It's like, nobody can say that they're the dude at this weight class. It's like, look, I've got all the titles. That's a me thing for, all these fucking floating boxing championships where you're the regular, the super, the interim, the gold, all that stuff. If the guy's got all of them, that's pretty impressive, which is one of the things I liked about Golovkin, is he was slowly collecting all of them. Because then, what are you going to say? It's like, that's my thing about the alphabet titles. There's so many titles out there these days, and let's say the alphabet, WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, it's a whole bunch of letters. That's what it is. Because then you've got fucking 37 guys out there claiming to be a world champion. It's like, okay, I get it. You're sanctioned by an organization to be their champion. But Crawford was that dude at 140. And there's a ton of matchups at 147. I'd love to see him fight the Danny Garcias, not Kell Brooks, the Errol Spence Jr.'s. Is that right? Errol Spence? Yeah. Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman, Sean Porter's. I'd love to see him fight those guys. I think Crawford's got a lot of stuff going for him right now. He's a switch hitter, he's naturally right-handed, fights in southpaw, or it could be reversed. I'm pretty sure it's as I said it, though. He's really slick offensively, got some really good counter shots. I am worried about sometimes when he's in a southpaw stance and he gets clipped a little bit. Now, not clipped isn't hurt, but he does get hit with some shots, and I think that's something that I'm going to have to look into a little bit more, because I see that as something that can be exploited. Excuse me. So yeah, that should be a good fight. Really like that. Anytime I can catch Terence Crawford fight, he's one of those guys who's must-watch TV for me. And if you're somebody out there who lives under a rock and doesn't know who he is, check it out. I'm telling you, check it out. Terence Crawford. He's one of the top pound-for-pound boxers right now. Anything else? Talk about Wilder Fury a little bit. I've been watching some of the press stuff for these guys. I'm really excited for this fight. Because whoever wins this fight, get him in there against Anthony Joshua, we can figure out who the best heavyweight on the planet is. That's for me, is like, I want to know who's the best. So when we hear all like the number 1 and number 2 guys, it's like, I don't much care for the titles in boxing because there's so many of them out there. I just want to know who's the best. I want to see the best fight the best. That's the thing about it in the UFC, is if they keep fiddling around with all these interim titles and shit like that, it gets on my nerves. I just want to see who's the best. I want to see the best fight the best. That's the thing for me. That's why I'm not campaigning for Conor McGregor to get a rematch against Khabib Nurmagomedov, because I want to see Tony Ferguson fight Khabib so we can see who the best lightweight in the world is. And maybe we can... Sorry, get back to boxing. I know, I'm bad about that. Wilder Fury, I think the more it's a boxing match, the more it favors Fury. And this is just my personal thoughts. I think the more it is like the moving around, sticking and jabbing and crossing and footwork. Oh, shit. Let me close that notification real quick. The more it is a strict boxing match, the more I favor Fury. But the more it's of a brawl, the more I favor Wilder. As this fight gets closer, I will definitely do a much more deep dive into that. Early on, like I said, you know, the straight boxing brain kind of makes me favor Fury, but as a guy who, as I've watched Wilder kind of grow and make his way up here, it's not, I like Wilder, you know? So, I'm not going to say a pick now, you know, I really have to go and look through some film and check out where they're both at, but, yeah, that's my thoughts there. Definitely going to, you know, I built up all that to say nothing, sorry. It's a good fight, though. It's going to be, I think, December 1st, if memory serves right, Showtime. So, as it gets closer, I will talk more about that. Like I said, this weekend, Terence Crawford, Jose Benavidez, Top Rank Boxing, ESPN. Check the prelims, ESPN Plus or the ESPN app. Bellator 207, Mitrione versus Bader 208, Fedor versus Chael, Paramount Network, and The Zone, which is an app. You have to download it or a service of some sort. I know it's horrible that I'm not getting that, but I just know it's on both Paramount Network, The Zone, Bellator 207 and 208. Semifinals there, Heavyweight Grand Prix. UFC 230 coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll deep dive on that some more. Khabib and Tony, that's the fight. That's kind of all I've got. I'm stretching. I'm always terrible at wrapping these things up, especially when I don't have a coach, somebody we can kind of bounce back and forth off. If there's any other big news, I know Glory Kickboxing 60's coming up. Probably touch up on that next weekend. I think it is. We've got Volkan Oezdemir and Anthony Smith. Touch up on that, maybe do a little refresher. But this has been Martial Arts Talk. I'm Kyle McCracken. Likes, comments, shares, Facebook, Twitter, all of that jazz. Give some shares, likes, questions, concerns. Signing off. Peace.